Mac Dino?
Yeah, we're going to have to look this up when we move to break.
Find it. I don't know who made our flag.
Anyway.
Beautiful flag, by the way.
Yeah.
That's all I care about.
So, when they had him out, I recorded the session, and they said, yeah, you can release it, but I didn't want to release the whole thing.
Okay.
Because as interesting as Mayor Nenshi is, again, I want to stay to that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I've got him, I've got something with Mayor Watson from a long time ago. I have an interview with the DCOM from WestJet, which I actually did in support of our book, but I'm going to take a piece out of that and put that out in Digital Public Affairs as well.
That makes sense.
And how often do you put your publish
sporadically
your
now? I used to try to do every week, but it's impossible to keep
Life
up.
Catches up, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So and I recorded some podcasts and had them all ready to go. And it took me 6 months to get around to editing and publishing them. So
what are some things you've taken from the podcast that you've learned that maybe if you can think of that you never thought before when you did the interviews?
Well, I think. I think the stuff that I've learned is more a reflection of how MPs are using it rather than how I see the tools being used. So, for example, it was really interesting to hear, for example, that Mark Carnell, the first thing he does in the morning is he rolls over in bed, grabs his phone, turns on Twitter. In fact, a lot of MPs will say the same thing. They want to see what's going on, and they want to know what their day is going to look like. Michelle Rempel will say that she often knows her entire day by 6 o'clock looking at Twitter.
Yeah.
And then unless there's something like a shooting or a stabbing or whatever, depending on where you are in Canada, that a terrible event that will change the course of the day, sometime later. But generally speaking, they have a good sense by the time they look at Twitter in the morning. So that was one. There was one, Lauren Liu from the NDP actually had an interesting comment, which was she takes an entrepreneurial approach to the way she serves as an MP, which I thought was really interesting because it's not necessarily an entrepreneurial role, but the cohort is such that being entrepreneurial is sexy, right? So she's not in high tech or she's not running a public affairs firm or whatever. She works on the Hill and she's trying to find ways to bring that entrepreneurial spirit into the work that she does. So little things like that. You get these little nuggets of insight that not only show how human our MPs actually are, but opens your eyes to an element that you never considered an MP might be doing. Like, who would have thought an MP would look at Twitter as a meaningful source?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's Twitter's amazing for that. I mean, that's how I check my news. It's like watching, 15 news channels all at the same time.
Yeah.
You get all the breakdowns of all the stories real quick. You can follow BBC, you can follow CTV news, you can get worldwide news all, and like you said, within a couple minutes you got everything there. So it's.
And I like the availability of interacting with an MP on a quick 140 characters instead of sending an email to them. It's going to be vouched for someone. If you have something quick to say to them, they can read it very quickly and go and choose or not choose to answer. Like I guess Mark Messier was saying at the Touch Talk, which I found very interesting. All right.
You actually brought up one. I'll share an interesting story from last night. This is actually a DM message. But my daughter is in a civics class right now. They're playing this game. I don't even know what it's called. But it's kind of, the game is derailed. So it's not something, they kind of play it in class, but it's over the course of the term.
Okay.
And it's this mock government, mock country kind of thing that's going on. I don't know all the details. But it's kind of devolved now into a kind of House of Cards / Suits, borderline unethical, borderline illegal, or maybe completely illegal stuff that's going on. So she comes home last night, she goes, you have to find out from one of your government friends if contracts are from previous government have to be honored by a new government. And I'm pretty sure they are. She goes, but you have to ask. You have to, I have to show something. So I was like, okay, well, so I DM'd Tony Clement and said, hey, my daughter's got this question, do they have to be honored? And he replies, maybe 20 minutes later, unless they want to be sued, yes. And my daughter thought that was like the best, right? The president of the Treasury Board is responding to my dad's text messages.
Yeah, that's great.
And he will be a guest on our show in 1 month, so you'll hear more from Tony Clement in 1 month.
He's a great interview, by the way. A lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
And especially with the things he was just doing in Toronto with the hackathon.
That's right. He's always been very supportive of that kind of stuff.
So it's going to be very good. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We have no Jen from Foodie Prince this week because she is unfortunately sick, so get better.
We're going to should have got her last week at the Touch Talks.
They do a weekly segment, so.
Yeah, no, but you should go record it there.
Yeah, we should have.
Well, there you go. Jen can talk about soup that makes you feel better.
Exactly.
In the next episode.
All right, one more song from Future States. This is Tackman, and we'll be right back.
Sunshine. It's been a long time. I'm busy, I guess. Gone away and everything's different. It's dark in the city. Thought that you would come back and smile on your face. That kind of kindness is asking for trouble. It's dark in the city. It's a strange sight, locked in a phase. Many came before you, all passed away in a long line. Holding lips, you're the spotlight.
All right, thank you once again, Future States. So that song was Tackman, and of course, see them next Friday, or this Friday. The Ottawa Showbox presents 3 great bands at Mugshots. So lots of fun in this beautifully tropical weather.
Who are the other 2 bands?
Other bands are Ashley's and Elementals. So you're
Awesome.
going to get a good diverse.
You said this Friday.
This Friday.
Yep.
So what
AKA
date?
tomorrow.
So, but what is tomorrow?
This
Because the
Friday
person who's
is-
listening
That's a
to
good
this-
question.
January the 16th.
16th, yeah.
January the 16th. All right. So we're here with Mark Blevis, owner of FullDuplex.ca, digital public affairs podcast, and also author. And so what we're going to do now is talk about the book Touch that he co-wrote with a good friend. And so, first of all, how long did it take you to write it? Was that your first book?
That was my first book, yeah.
How did you like the undertaking going from
It was-
digital to...
Sorry, I cut you off there. It was fun. And the writing process was essentially all digital. I mean, I still use Post-it notes, my wall, but we actually, one of the things that we did is we met in a hotel in Winnipeg. Spent 3 days there. My entire wall, my window, and in the room.
You don't want to go outside in Winnipeg.
Yeah, that's right. And we did it in July. We picked Winnipeg because it was halfway between us. Because Todd's from Vancouver and I'm from Ottawa, of course. But we wanted to go somewhere where we were going to be forced to work. So we picked an airport hotel.
Okay.
There's absolutely nothing appealing about an airport hotel.
Or Winnipeg.
I'm
kidding.
I won't comment on Winnipeg. I didn't
yeah.
even really get to see much of Winnipeg. But being in the hotel, the food was passable, the bed was comfortable, and we were there with a task at hand, which was 3 days. We've got to get things moving. This is about a month after we decided to do the book together. So that kind of kicked off the process, and that was July of 2013. The book went to the printers on in August 2014. So the whole process was about 14 months.
Oh, that's good. And then it was released in October?
It was released in October. A lot of fun. Though, what I didn't realize, though, is that the 14 months of writing, I kind of thought, okay, we write it, the book is printed, we can chill out now. It's like, no, the work begins when the book actually ends up in the bookcase, right? So it's a big job, and as a first-time author, I'm kind of learning trial by fire. Mm-hmm. But it's been fun, and it inspired the Touch Talks, which we'll get to in a minute. But you asked about the writing process. So we did it digitally, and what was very interesting is we used a tool called Scrivener, which is a brilliant tool. Yeah. If you're going to write a book, use Scrivener. But if you're going to write collaboratively, it's a problem because it's not a cloud-based tool. It doesn't share files very well. So we have the book up on Dropbox, and we each had to take turns accessing the book. So we broke up the week into 2 chunks and had a spare day, a float day. So if Todd was having an on-fire week or I was having an on-fire week, one of us would ask for that spare day. Or if we were both just burned out, that spare day would be a day off. So that prevented collisions and corruption of the book file. But it would have been so great if Scrivener worked the same way Google Docs does. Yeah. The problem with Google Docs is it's a linear way of writing, whereas Scrivener is non-linear. So for writing books, writing stories, and all that stuff, writing essays, writing reports, Scrivener is a brilliant tool. But if you're collaborating with somebody, it's a pain in the butt.
So future books?
There'll probably be some, yeah.
Yeah. But are you going to do collaborations as well, you think?
I think I will always do collaborations. What I've learned over time is that my best work, the stuff I do that comes out the best, the stuff I have the most fun and then I learn the most during, is always the stuff I do with other people. So I've enjoyed doing my podcast on my own, and that's great. I interview people, so I guess that's pretty collaborative.
Yeah.
But I've also run a conference and co-hosted some podcasts, and those were the most fun and most rewarding.
Yeah.
And so, and the book is the same deal. Like, I don't think I would have enjoyed the process or even being as efficient as I was if it wasn't for having a...
Two heads are always better than one, right?
Yeah.
And who is the book geared towards? Who's your audience that you really want to be reading this book?
Which is an interesting question because the book is marketed as a business book.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In my view, it's for anybody who wants to use digital tools to affect change. So whether that's a leader of a multinational corporation, whether it's a campaign manager for a local municipal candidate, whether it's somebody who's got a condo going up in their backyard and they're going to use digital tools to try and rally up support to try and stall the project or derail the project, who knows, or somebody's raising funds for cancer research or whatever the case is. Anybody who wants to use digital tools, who sees them either as a challenge or there's an opportunity to do a better job, this is the book for you.
And what are some of the biggest digital tools that are like kind of leading the pack right now, I guess?
Well, the obvious ones obviously are Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
Those are the most talked about. YouTube for video. I spoke to a group of firefighters yesterday, and we were talking about how to pick your tools and how to use them for a campaign. And much like we said in the book, is you have to kind of write a job description. Well, first know what your goals are, your objectives, and then you kind of have to write a job description of what it is that needs to be done, jobs that need to be done to achieve those goals. And sometimes you'll find that a piece of technology will fit the job description. Sometimes a person will fit the job description. And so you have to staff the jobs based on the skill sets of the people and the tools. So rather than going, hey, I need Twitter, maybe for Twitter, what your answer is it fills a job description of, I need a direct line of communication to the media.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you don't know the media and you're not going to go out to media events or you don't know how to engage the media, Twitter is probably your best bet at that point. Now, it's not as simple as that. Of course, it's a little bit more involved. But the idea is Twitter then has a purpose. It's going to complete a job for you, which is, this is my media tool.
Yeah. Is there any up-and-coming tools or social media platforms that you know of that nobody uses?
I think Instagram is going to be a lot more utilized this year.
I mean, Instagram, you had Pinterest that
words.
people thought were going to get big and then just didn't really.
Yeah. Well, Pinterest is kind of like delicious, right? In that respect. It's great for curating content, and there's a cohort of people that will curate stuff. And I've seen and heard of examples of people planning their wedding using Pinterest. So they find stuff on Pinterest, and then they catalog it, and that's how they organize it. And they go, this is my color scheme, these are my flowers, these are table settings. For that. So it's perfect for that kind of stuff. I still use Delicious, so maybe I'm antiquated. I still use Flickr. You always hear about new and exciting tools. I think it's getting very hard for new and exciting tools to break through.
It's going to be hard to compete with the ones that are out there, right?
Yeah. Because the last thing
manpower that they have, 3,000 employees at Twitter, 8,000 employees at Facebook.
And the other thing is,
a lot of manpower working.
Who really wants to pick up and move from this location to the next, right? Because you've already got an established pattern and you have an established content, right?
Once I moved my MySpace to Facebook stuff, that was it.
Yeah, and now you got a podcast.
Yeah.
But the challenge is you don't want to shut down your Facebook profile, because all that content that you've put up there, which is now searchable, by the way, suddenly for me Facebook is that much more valuable, because up until about 2 months ago you couldn't search your own timeline. If you wanted to see something, when was that? My uncle died in March 2012, this thing happened, I don't know, within 3 weeks either side of that. Then you got to scroll back. Now you can actually search for the names of the people in your stream, and so you can actually see in your timeline where it was.
You do your research on yourself. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's handy because sometimes you want to find a photo where you want to see a person. We're at the age now where sadly people are either getting divorced or getting sick, and so it's like, I really had to see a picture of Derek. I miss him. And it's easy to find that stuff now. So it's a bit of a tangent, but ultimately I think there are tools out there, but the tools that are up and coming, which may or may not have some sort of traction in the future, are only going to cater to the early adopters at the beginning.
Yeah.
The earlier, if you're talking about an election, it's going to be sexy for a small group of people that you use this particular tool. Google Plus was a great example a few years ago. There were a few people on Google Plus. It was big news to the people who used Google Plus. Nobody else cared.
Yeah.
And so I think